Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
How are you, man?
Not bad. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, sounds great.
I haven't done one of these before. Actually, I had to ask my 14-year-old how to work it.
That's great.
I got a live lesson the other day where she was, I'm going to throw that light off in that.
Okay.
Oh, that's better. Where she showed me all the buttons, and we went live with my wife so she could give me a demonstration.
Nice. Hey,
Yeah.
are you just coming off work or are you off for the day?
I was off last night. I worked this weekend and then into next week a whole bunch.
Gotcha. So, as you know, Treadmill Talk is basically accountability for me to get on the treadmill. So, I'm going to interview while or we'll discuss things while I interview you. I like to start with some speed round questions. So, favorite cereal?
Oh, Frosted Flakes, no doubt.
Oh, nice pull. Favorite sports team?
I guess the Patriots. I haven't done much with sports, but New England still has to be Patriots.
Gotcha. And give me your favorite superhero and favorite villain.
Oh, I don't even know. So I guess I'll go with Deadpool because apparently he's a superhero that Sean Edwards likes. And I don't even know a villain. I couldn't even think of one.
All right. Give yourself an introduction, please.
My name's Nick Hodgen. I'm a canine handler and trainer up in New Hampshire in a small department. I've been up here about 15 years for police work, 11 doing canine. And I'm also a PSA IPO, and I actually do some Mondio ring decoying, so I do a whole bunch of support decoying and training in addition to police canine stuff.
Nice. So, with all the sports that you've participated in, if you had to pick one to roll with for the rest of your life, which one would it be?
Probably PSA, simply because it more corresponds to doing the police work type of stuff. It's not the biggest gap. I despise and hate this sport's harder than this sport stuff. This one's more tough and this one's more real and all that crap. It's just a different set of skills for each of the sports. There's a lot of challenges in training IGP stuff. There's a lot of challenges in training Mondio stuff. There's a lot of challenges in PSA stuff. It all is just a different set of skills. I always say it's kind of like comparing hockey to football. They both take skill and athleticism. They're just different sports. But I guess I'd have to say PSA just because I'm a little bit more ingrained in it and I can better correspond some of the skills in PSA to some of the skills for a patrol dog.
Nice. No, I mean, obviously, I didn't write this question down, but I've kind of spawned off of it. If you had to decide on one side of the fence to that battle back and forth between street dogs versus sport dogs, they're real, not real, give me your take on that.
Well, I actually have a very interesting take on that. I think my patrol dog is plenty real enough. However, he has a PSA 1 title and he won a bunch of trophies and shit. So I don't think that there has to be one or the other. So I think training a dog is training a dog. That doesn't necessarily need to be a designation of a sport dog or a patrol dog. When you get into some of the finer tuning of the aggression and some of the man orientation type of work with your patrol dog, you're going to want to do that sort of stuff, where you may leave some of that stuff out with some of your sport dogs, depending on the sport. So it's like there's a Mondio dog in my club that doesn't have a lot of natural aggression, but it's still going to do really well in the sport of Mondio, but it wouldn't make it as a police dog, I don't think. There's also a PSA dog in my club that I think would be a outstanding patrol dog. He has that little bit of aggression in there. I think it's all technicalities and how the dog is being trained and the type of genetic and trained qualities in the dog, but I don't like the designation of a sport dog or police dog or real dog. It's the training and it's the application that's given to the dog.
Nice. What's your definition of a decoy?
Well, there's two different types of decoys. So there's a training decoy that helps to problem solve, to build a foundation, to set a foundation for the training, to teach the scenarios and teach the behaviors as part of the scenarios, teach the dog how to counter, how to regrip, IGP, how to bark, how to get its butt off the ground, all these little technical details that go into that good training decoy work. And then there's the trial decoy work. And I think that there's a definite difference in between the decoy in training and the decoy in trial. To be quite honest, I think I do a lot more training decoy work than I do trial decoy work. I don't think I'm a super good trial decoy, and I haven't put a lot of time and effort in being one, but I have put a lot of time and effort into being a good training decoy. The trial decoy has to be safe, obviously. It has to be powerful, but the biggest thing, he has to be consistent. He catches that first dog out of 10 on the PSA 1 long bite, he's got to have that same power and speed on number 10 25 minutes later. And it can't look any different. It's unfair to the competitors if it looks any different. So I think that there's a whole set of challenges in that. And then all of a sudden the dog is coming up and he's looking right, and then he jukes left the last second, and he's still got to be safe in that catch, even though he was doing the dog before, which was perfectly all left bicep the whole way through. There's a lot of skill in there. My buddy Josh is a spectacular trial decoy. He can get the same for every dog, the same power, the same training every time. I get in there and have a dog start countering, and then they slow down, and I want to help them counter a little bit, because that's what I do as a training decoy.
Right.
So I think there's a definite difference, but that's my definition to sum it all up, is a decoy is a guy that's helping your dog train, that's helping your dog learn how to bite, learn how to feel about biting, how those emotions and those drives are applied through the biting, and then also how the technical parts of the scenarios and training goes.
Nice. Hey, what are some examples of things that you do to build confidence in a low drive dog?
Well, you got to win. So Carlos Ramirez said it on one of the podcasts a while ago. It's about bite work, and it's not about outwork. So more wins, the better. I'm a big guy with letting dogs carry, with letting the dogs hold, be possessive and cap over it, if that's what they want to do. So I think that the lower drive dog is a little bit more of a challenge. It's going to obviously depend on the dog. But if I can get some good barking and maybe even a touch of aggression where it backs me off a little bit, there's a little bit of tone in that barking, that I think will help raise the confidence in the dog. And then from there, marking that barking or that raise in aggression, sending the dog out, letting him grip, and then just letting him win, letting him circle. I'm a big guy that I don't use the suit for everything all the time. I use the suit to proof a couple things, in the sport world, of course, to proof a couple things and to show a couple of the scenarios later on. But I'll do a lot of Belgian sleeves. I'll do a lot of wedges. I'll do the IGP hard sleeve for the PSA dogs, things that they can win, things that they can carry, because that helps boost their confidence. It helps make them feel good about the exercise.
By looking at so a lot of stuff that you post, I know you like to do a lot of table work.
Yes.
Explain the benefit of that table work.
So, well, first and foremost, the table does not have to be all defensive and all too much, nerve, like you're going to fall off the back of the table and die, or else you're going to bark and bite. It has that reputation sometimes, and it doesn't need to have that reputation. I have two separate types of table. I have your typical tall table that's square with a pole in the back of it, and I also have what I'd call a box or a barking box. A lot of people are using them. It's a little bit lower, and it's got walls along the side of it and an overhang on the top of it. So you can use them for a couple different purposes. The table, I'm going to have a little bit more of the mental attitude in the dog. That's more what I'm looking for. Most of our dogs that are genetically predisposed are going to open their mouth and bite the equipment. That's not something I should have to teach them. So, but where their mentality is going to be important. How they're feeling about it. Are they all in prey? Are they in a little bit of defense? Or are they in a blending of prey and defense together to get aggression? So getting the barking up on the table is all about getting the right mentality. So the table itself brings the dog up. So now he's eye level or slightly above eye level. So that changes the interaction with the decoy, gives the dog a little bit more on edge. But then when he barks, it's a little easier to give him a reward for that barking, for that mentality. So I use the table for that, just trying to build the mentality of the dog up a little bit stronger by trying to increase some of the aggression, which I get a lot through the barking. The box, the smaller box with the walls on the side, I love that for targeting, especially on the PSA dogs. You've been downfield. Any of the decoys that have been downfield, when the dog is coming downfield, you open your arm up and you're like, I hope he's going there. And you watch him come up and you don't know where he's going, and you only have a limited amount of control over it. So you don't want to bail and you don't want to jam them. So they're mostly in charge. When the dog's in the in the box, and he's cross-tied with the bar, he's got walls in the side, he's got nowhere to go. So barking forward, he's barking forward. I can show that bicep. I can show him where I want him to be. He's not quite where I want him to be. I can back out, get more of the barking and the mentality, come back in and show him. And through a series of repetition over that, the only part that he ends up biting is on that bicep. There's no mistakes because he juked left and the decoy went right when he's downfield. So it really improves that targeting. I can also use the box for, or even the table, for distraction work. In the PSA side, you're coming up with the distractions, you're making the distractions move, they're moving, you're watching the dog's eyes, you're making sure his mentality is right, and then as his mentality is right, you're coming in, dropping the distractions, and showing the bicep. After a while, you bring it in, you bring the distractions in more and more and more, and you can come right through it. So the table and the box are not just tools to make them mean and scary, which they have a bad reputation for that. They are tools in order to promote good mentality and behaviors in the dog, and also you can use them to fine-tune some things. Another thing that's great with the box is working on the outs, because you have the ability to put a long line on the dog, on the collar, underneath the neck. You can back the decoy up, bring the decoy in, grip them, out them, have a third party working that long line, working that out, and then you have a decoy that's right there ready to reward. So it might be getting a little bit more technical than some of your Treadmill talks, but
no, that's great. I love it.
But yes, that's what I'm using the table for. The mentality is super, super important to me. So any of us can put on a suit, open our arm up, and let the dog run up and jump and bite it. So there's border collies that will run up and jump and bite it. So, but making the mentality of a dog that wants to bite you, that wants to be there, not necessarily just out of prey, not out of defense, of course, but out of a little bit of, I want to bite you because biting is awesome. That's the mentality that we're trying to create. And you've got to make sure that dog is in that right mentality in the training mindset, so they'll have the confidence to hit that trial decoy downfield when they go out and do trial stuff.
Nice. Hey, how much bungee work do you do?
A little bit more so with the Mondio dogs or the ring dogs. I'll do a little bit with the bicep dogs. The bicep dogs are a little harder though, if you don't have a raised table for the bungee, because the bungee by design is keeping their head a little bit lower. And then you're asking them to jump up into the biceps so their head's lower to begin with. The leg dogs, though, for the Mondio stuff or any of the ring sport stuff, I love doing it for that. I can show them the one leg as they start coming into the bungee, pull that leg back, throw the other leg just within that strike zone, and they're stretching all the way out, turning their head nicely for that grip. The ring sports are looking more at the speed of the entry and making sure that the dog catches than necessarily the grip. PSA, we're all about the grip. IGP, most of the dogs that are competing high levels have a full grip already, but they need to have it to get those high points. However, ring sports are not necessarily looking at the grip. They're looking at how the dog is going to catch the decoy, making sure the decoy is not getting away, and then they're outing quickly. So by doing the bungee, you're creating speed in the dog. If you had to run every day with 100 pounds on your back, and then one day I took the 100 pounds off, then you'd run a little faster and be a little easier. Same thing with the bungee. So that's kind of a go-to fix for some entry type of stuff or pivot type of stuff with the ring dogs.
Nice. Hey, when you certified through PSA, what was your prep, if you had a prep for it, and what would you say going into certification, what were you lacking the most?
I was not in the best shape as I could have been. I didn't put a lot of effort. I honestly never put a lot of effort in physical fitness, and now I'm 40, it's catching up to me. But I wasn't in the best shape. One of the things that they're doing, I certified in, I think, like 2013, and they weren't doing as much of what I've been seeing them do now. One of the things I've been seeing a bunch of is, like, you're doing a burpee, you're not looking at the dog, you're doing a couple of burpees, and then you're up, and then you flip around, and as you're flipping around, the dog's already been sent, and you're catching the dog, which I like. I think that's great because it doesn't give you, as a decoy, a lot of time to process what you're going to do, how you're going to do it. You just need to do it out of muscle memory. You've now been physically exhausted. You flip around and you catch the dog out of, even though you're in that physically exhausted state. It's a certification. It's a test. They're making sure you can do it. And if you can do it under stress and tired as a muscle memory mechanic, then you're good to go on the field, in my opinion. So, I think if I had to do a whole bunch of those burpees and run back and forth at the time, it wouldn't have been as good. At that time, I was working dogs probably at least 3 to 5 times a week, and in the vicinity of 15 to 20 dogs a session, going out to do bite work. So my physical fitness routine was my decoy work. So I wasn't necessarily exercising for the certification. I was just working dog after dog after dog after dog. So I was in good enough shape to do it, but that's definitely something that I would recommend. My new decoy in training, I've got her doing some upper body strength work and some conditioning work, because that's going to be a thing that's really important for her.
Nice. For you, what's the ratio between bite work and obedience for young dogs, puppies?
The biggest thing is that engagement. This has probably been a change over the last, 3, 4 years, 5 years. My friend Rebecca, that co-runs the business and sport club with me, she runs the business, but she helps me with the sport dogs. She's really been influential in making sure that our program's been adjusted to include the obedience. There was a time, I would say 3, 4 years ago, where I had a ton of dogs that could bite really well, that some of them could out to, and they weren't doing obedience. It wasn't a thing. You came up to my group or my club, you worked your dog in bite work, we made it mean and angry, put some aggression on it, let it bark, let it bite, let it carry its sleeve around. It was awesome, but we never made you do obedience. That my members now can speak that that's not the case anymore. When you come in, there might be a month or two before we give a dog a bite because we needed to work on some of the obedience thing. So I would say at this point, for every biting session, there's at least 2 to 3 obedience sessions as a reference. Obedience doesn't need to be the full healing pattern. As a matter of fact, it shouldn't. But you got to bring your dog on the field, and it's got to pay attention to you for a minute, especially a sport dog. It's got to pay attention to you for a minute before you get to do any bite work, before you do anything like that. So we try to incorporate obedience much more. If you're coming up here to train and you're going to go out there and title, which I'm proud to say we have a ton of people that have come up here to train and gone to title in a variety of different sports, you've got to do the whole package. You have to do the obedience too. And then also, I don't want to be in a position of training a dog that does just bite work and has no obedience or no control behind it.
What age? What age are you starting for that?
Well, I have a 7-month-old Malinois right now that I might keep or I might sell. It depends on what happens with it. I like it quite a bit. It's a very, very nice dog. He is biting legs right now. He's doing the hunt drive stuff. He's doing the article alert, and he's also doing engagement. So he's not healing 100 yards downfield, but he's doing the pan work. He's putting his front paws in the pan. He's pivoting his rear end. Anything that's upbeat and fun. I think you can start at least engagement. And engagement and obedience should be in the same sentence all the time. So, and you looked at me, click, have some food for looking at me, thanks. So that is obedience in the rawest form. So I'll start that right away as soon as I can. So because that's much easier to start adding that stuff up now. At this age, when that Mal comes out to do bite work, he puts his harness on by the car, he drags over the field, and he does bite work. When he comes out to do anything else, then we work on the engagement with the food or the toy right away. Maybe another couple months, 10 to 12 months, we'll start asking to do both of them together, where you have to engage a little bit before you do the bite work. And then you get to do the bite work after that. So I'm okay with a clear separation between the two behaviors at the young age, but I think you still have to have the young age, or the work at the young age.
Switching gears a little bit, going back to the department and the training aspect from that. Two-part question.
Okay.
What do you think generally most departments are lacking? And if we had to really narrow it down, what would you say the two most lacking pieces of equipment departments have?
All right. I think, well, you can kind of answer that both together, in that I think the training-wise, a lot of departments are still, especially speaking nationwide, so many departments are just throwing the old suit or the old sleeve on the new kid, have him go stand in the corner and let the dog go bite him, and everybody laughs when he yells and gets a bruise. So, and they're doing that all there. We cannot seem to get everybody across the board to stop doing that. There's nothing productive with throwing the sleeve on the new kid and asking him to go hide in the corner. You're not building anything for the dog. You're just running through emotions, and we all get to pick on the new kid. So I think equipment-wise, I think the biggest thing that they're lacking is really training decoys well. And I'm obviously a big believer in a civilian sport decoy or a civilian training decoy being allowed to work police dogs and being encouraged to work police dogs. So I think they're lacking in good decoy work and good decoy training into their bite work and apprehension type of stuff. And then with that, I think they're lacking the good equipment for that. Everybody buys the giant Ray Allen mattress suit or something like that, which is not doing anything for the dogs either. So spending the money on a good quality bite suit, if you're a trainer with 8 guys in your department that are one guy's 6'4" and one guy's 5'6", it's a pain in the ass to buy everybody a suit that's custom fit. You just can't do it. So you're trying to find a suit that works for most everybody in the group, which then ends up with a suit that doesn't fit really well for some people. So I get that it's difficult. I understand that it's difficult. But I would say that's definitely on the apprehension side, something that's lacking with a lot of the departments. Good decoy work and good decoy equipment. I went to an agency out west and wanted to do some leg bites, and I asked the agency if I could have a leg sleeve, and they literally went, "They make leg sleeves?" I'm like, "Yes, they make leg sleeves. They go on the legs just like they go on the arms." So like, no idea. So, all right, so I guess we're not doing leg sleeves, but they just didn't know. They didn't know that they make such a thing. And to me, leg sleeves are a crucial piece of equipment. I was amazed.
I'm pretty sure Eric's taking a shot. It says, "I'm 5'8", thus I tower over Nick."
So I'm 5'7", Eric. We've never actually spoke face to face. Well, yes, we have actually. But I'm 5'7". There's no towering involved, Eric.
That Eric is such a ball buster.
He's a good guy. I like Eric quite a bit.
Great guy. Hey, tell us what does a particular training day for your guys look like?
The police or the sport dogs?
Let's go police first.
All right. So I'm glad you asked that, because I think the stuff I have to say, well, the Gooseby stuff is awesome. I love Mike Gooseby's episode. I've never met the man, but I've seen him on media. I've listened to this. I think it was a phenomenal interview where he talks about the way that the department trains and operates, etc. The way that I train and operate out here is the complete other side of the spectrum, which I just think is a cool way to change. My department has 14 officers. I'm the only canine officer. We work 24 hours a day, and we are literally the biggest department in our little circle. Everybody beside us is all maybe 3 to 5 officers, and one department even has 1 officer. So we're a much, much smaller agency. I'm in a small state. The state of New Hampshire has about 1 million people. Some of the guys that you've had on the show work for agencies that their city has 1 million people. So the town that I work in is 6,000 people. At most, there's 3 people working a shift, me and 2 others. So the type of work that we do is a lot different. So, Gooseby's talking about the guys on his search team, the guys on his perimeter, and that sort of stuff. The guys on his search team and perimeter double the amount of people on my department. Which I just think is a unique and kind of humorous change. So he says they don't track. We track. We have to track. I don't have a perimeter to hold everybody in a 2-block thing. I have acres and acres of woods sometimes behind the houses, so we have to track. So my department training, and then, okay, so before we get into that, so the way that works is I train, obviously, my dog for my department. At this point in time, I run a regional training group, and I have about 6 to 10 dogs, depending on the day, that come in for training. Most of those dogs are from New Hampshire, and most of those dogs are 1-dog departments as well. Some of the departments are like 20 people. I think one's like 40, but they're still 1 dog. They operate like I do. They operate in New Hampshire. They operate with smaller perimeters and smaller groups, no helicopters. So because of the way that we work out here, we do the training that we use out here. So 10-hour training day, the first 5 or 6 of them are tracking every week. So, because that's our bread and butter. Like Gooseby said, I've stole his line complete. Thank you, Mike. That's an awesome line. If you're going to do something, don't train something 85% of the time that you're only going to do 1% of the time. We're going to track 85% of the time. So we're spending 85% of our training time working on tracking. Tracking is, as a trainer, trying to set it up well, is just more logistically involved. Making sure the track layer knows where he goes, the track layer staying, that way 2 turns down the street, and the other track layers going that way 2 turns down the street. They don't interfere with each other. We're going to go find this one, then we're going to come back, and then we're going to go find this one. But before we go find that one, we got to put the other track out going this way. So setting that tracking up, it takes a little bit of time. And then doing the track, obviously, if you go a quarter mile out to go find somebody, and then you have to come a quarter mile back, put the dogs up, swap dogs to go find the other guy, it takes time. But we do it because that's how we deploy out here. That's how we track. We have to track. Majority of my finds are on tracks, and they, my last find where I had a physical apprehension, it was me, my backup guy, 1 person at the house still. No, 2 people at the house still. It's domestic, and then 1 person with me in the woods. And that was it. There was 4 of us on the scene altogether. Wow. So you have to get used to operating that way, and you have to train and work around how you operate.
So you must be really tight with the guys that you work with because it's just you guys.
Yes. So, yeah, we're by no means a big agency, but the towns right next to us are smaller, maybe 1 person working at a time where we have 3. So we help out with a lot of other towns. But yes, I'm very tight with the guys that I work with. I get picked on all the time because I spend all my time doing dog stuff. And at one point I was the Petco part-time sergeant because I wasn't working on a bunch of patrol shifts. I was doing a bunch of training shifts, and then obviously I train dogs, so I must work at Petco. So, that we busted each other quite a bit, but I would go through the door with any of them.
Nice. That's what it's about. Hey, so when you guys are tracking, what apps or anything that you guys are using to keep track of all that stuff? No pun intended.
Yep. So I have everybody in my group, in my training group, on the man trailing app, and I have my track layers on the man trailing app. Nice. I like the man trailing app most of the time. Every now and then the satellites are funky, and it disagrees with the satellites. And of course, it's always that best track ever that the satellite overlay doesn't work. So, but if you do the man trailing app and then you do the pro version, which is like $9 for the year, I can go out and lay a track and man trail it, and then I can send it back to you. You can have it on your phone, and then you can start your app, and then as you start doing the track, it'll overlay the 2 of them together. Then you could print it, a GPX or a PDF file, and add it to your training logs. So we all use it. an agency that I help my friend with out west all the time. They're all using it now. It's all part of their training logs. I've also used it successfully on real tracks. So as you go to get deployed, you throw the app on, put your phone back in your back pocket or in your vest or something, then do the track, and then when you're all done, you could print off the track, and it literally is going to show a satellite overlay of where you've been, what you did. You can also, if you're like me, where you're working a track sometimes for a long time, that might even turn into a bit of an area search. When you get into a certain area, you could stop, pull the map up, and be like, you know what, I didn't clear that that crevice off to the right where it cuts in between the trees. So you now go clear over that area. So man trailing all day long. I really like that app.
Do you have a preference between tracking and area searching?
So I have a preference in how we track. I actually am a trainer and business partner with a friend of mine out west, and we teach tracking, trailing, and we teach two of them combined. I think there's a little bit of difference between trailing and tracking, and then by understanding the two differences and employing the two differences, you'll end up catching bad guys more. So backing up, I like a dog to track for its foundation. Kick the dirt in, put the food in it, put the dog's nose down, pull into the harness on a very straight, no ifs and or buts about it posture, pulling straight forward, nose to the ground, tracking. From there, I'll start to loosen it up a little bit, allowing the dog to possibly come off odor for a left-hand turn or a right-hand turn or something. And as the dog comes off odor, recognizing the negative and bringing the dog back into odor, letting the dog turn on odor again, and then finishing. From there, you can loosen it up a little bit more and start working a little bit more of a trailing, which is going to be just your scent picture, not necessarily your ground disturbance, down the street or something like that. Anybody that's ever tracked in the city or down the main drag in a busy area, if you ever noticed between the two buildings, the wind's a little heavier between the two buildings than it is on the street. Your trailing, by definition, might be going a little bit into that alley, getting that negative and swinging himself back out and putting himself back into odor. So working the human odor where it collects versus just the ground disturbance, I think would be the difference in tracking and trailing. So back to the original question, I do a lot of trailing, allowing the dogs to come off odor, letting work back into odor, and recognizing that posture and that heavy pull into the line, not just ground disturbance. That way, regardless of what the surface is, I can still work the dog in a hunting manner. That trailing is closer to an area search. Some of the guys will be like, well, the nose is up, so he's area searching. Like, well, he's not area searching because the subject's not right here, but he's definitely working odor where it's going to collect. Do that for tracking, trailing, put a toy at the end, put a subject at the end of the toy or something like that. Separate from that, I run what I call a point-to-point. I actually wrote an article for it for one of the magazines, and the point-to-point for patrol. So what I'll do with that is I'll put a hidden decoy low underneath the trailer or into some sort of hide, bushes or something like that. No track to where the subject is. The subject comes in from the backside, goes to hide into the trailer, for example, and then I'll move the canine team from one point to the other. Along the way, because we're downwind, the dog will turn its nose, get an air scent of the subject underneath the trailer or something like that, drag in for a bite. I don't do big area searches because that's not how we deploy out here. I don't have the perimeters in order to do big area searches. I'll do them sometimes because they're good and motivating for the dog, but it's not a big thing that we do a bunch. But I'll do these point-to-points almost every training day where the dog is getting a bite after you nose. We'll also do the tracks every day, and then all of a sudden, magically, they come together. That end picture with the decoy at the end or the apprehension at the end was trained during the point-to-point. The tracking was trained separate, and the dog was rewarded along the way for the tracking. Nice. Did I explain that well?
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. When it comes to article searching, and you're alert. How do you teach your dogs? What's that alert process for article searching?
So the alert first process for article searching. So I don't hyperfixate on sitting and downing right away. So it's a newer trend, if you will, or the movement on that focused final response versus just that trained final response of the sit, the down, or something like that. So I don't work on any of the behaviors that would be obedience commands, because I'm also teaching obedience. If I tell a dog to sit and then ask a dog to sit at the article, it's doable, but there can be a little bit less clear. So in the foundation, I work a lot of the washers or small pieces of metal. When the dog puts its nose on the piece of metal, mark that with a clicker, drop some food in there. Mark it with a clicker, drop some food in there. My Malinois now, 7-8-month-old Malinois, is doing he puts his nose straight down on the article. He may lay down after a minute, but we're still working on that. But his nose is straight down on the article, and he's basically frozen, a stare, as some people call it, where that nose and that fixation is right on the article, and then we're rewarding on the article. After a while of doing that, there's a couple different ways to do it, but you'll start asking for a down or a lay down on an article like that. But the biggest thing for me is that they hit the article and that their change of behavior, their focus is all onto the article, tells me they have it. I don't care whether they're sitting or downing or laying down or putting their paw up the air or moving their tail around or whatever. I need to know that they found the article. So there's also another part to that. I'll train the alert completely separate from the search of the article. So right now, the Mal, I keep referring to him because he's my new project and he's awesome. So, but the Mal right now, he can hit the washer if it's out there in front of him, stare at it, and maybe lay down, stare at it, maybe lay down, get food. You can make distraction. You can do all those types of things around him. He's just crushing it. He's had about 3 or 4 actual searches for the washer. Versus 100 reps of just putting his nose on it and getting rewarded at it. Make the alert first, make the behavior you're looking for at the washer, whether it's a sit or down or stare, and then start adding the search in there with small searches. But I don't do the two of them together. Searching is done separate than alerting.
Nice. Hey, what's your most fascinating canine story?
Well, I really debated whether I wanted to tell you the porta potty bite story. It's not fascinating, but the guys always seem to love it whenever I tell it at a conference or something like that. So, had a guy that was intoxicated. He was maybe a little bit unstable. He was under arrest. We've been dealing with him for a very, very long time. There's a long history of stuff going on with him. To shorten up that part of it. He was inside of a porta potty. He had been inside of the porta potty for a long time. He was under arrest for trespassing, and he wouldn't come out. We legit spent 20 to 30 minutes trying to negotiate with him to get him to come out of the porta potty, explaining to him that he's under arrest, and none of us were going inside the porta potty with him. So he would not come out. So eventually, I took my dog out of the car. We forced the door, and I gave commands expecting him to come out. I couldn't fathom that he wouldn't come out. My dog does have a decent amount of aggression. He gets pretty angry pretty quick, and the guy would not come out. I did not send my dog. That's how the story ends up turning, but I didn't send it. But I did physically try to remove the guy from the porta potty at this point. He did have a bag next to him that I didn't know if he had a weapon. I didn't know anything like that. So he was still using the porta potty at that point. So I grabbed him, went to pull him out. He grabbed me and went to pull me in there with him, and that wasn't happening. So then he got bit on the leg. I dragged him out, lifted my dog off, and we put him in handcuffs. But I've gone around and you're like, you're the guy that had the dog bite someone in the porta potty. I'm like, yeah, factual. But it was after I was being assaulted. It wasn't a straight or something like that. So I like that story quite a bit because it's interesting.
His day got shitty real fast, huh?
Yeah. So, yeah, there's so many one-liners. So, I I always like the narcotic searches where the dog propels himself in the vehicle. I always find those a little bit fascinating. I'm not a huge narcotics guy. I do the training of it, obviously. My dog is a narcotics dog, but it's not my greatest thing in the planet. But I have had 2 or 3 finds in which my dog self-propelled himself inside of the vehicle on odor. We do exterior searches only on the road out here in New Hampshire. We do not have a vehicle exception like a lot of the states do. So if I get an alert on the outside of the vehicle, we have to seize the vehicle and issue a search warrant or apply for a search warrant.
Wow.
So, yeah, there is no vehicle exception. So down south or anywhere else, dog runs on the outside of the car, dog hits on the outside of the car, they then search the car right there on the side of the road. I don't. We have to take the car back to the sally port, lock it up, apply for a search warrant if there's an exterior alert. So I've ran my dog on the outside of the vehicle trying to get that alert a couple times, and he has got enough odor from inside of the vehicle to self-propel himself inside of the vehicle. So that's always a fun time, especially when the guy is standing there going, I thought you were just checking the outside. I'm like, well, I thought we were checking the outside too. But then I'll reel him back in and get him back on the other side of it. So those are always fun.
Hey, so everybody talks about the winning moments, the fascinating stories, but there's got to be a bad story that you've learned from and that you tell people so that they learn from it. So give me one of those stories.
So, that's interesting too. There's one of my notes that I have here is I wanted to talk about, I don't know, it's not a whine, but it is what it is. Another interesting change from the big department with lots of deployments to the small department is the fact of the lots of deployments. I've been doing Canine for a long time, so, but because I work in a smaller area, I don't deploy all the time. We don't have a robbery every other week. It just doesn't happen. So there is definitely something to the amount of deployments that we have, learning from those deployments, and struggling to be successful in those deployments. If you deploy your dog 3 times a week and you have 2 robbery tracks a month, you can afford to make an oops on one of them, and then you'll have a fine not too long after that. Gooseby was talking about how, you had the fine last time, okay, I'll do the track this time. It's not how it works in a small department. Small department, you show up with your dog, and they're like, oh, the dog is here, yay, here we go. And they're expecting magic to the subject at the end, and they better get it that time. But you don't have the repetition in deployments to guarantee magic all the time. The only real way to get around that is to train a ton, which is one of the reasons why I train, every day, regardless whether I'm working or not, is to get that repetition on the dog because they don't have the amount of deployments. So to be successful with that, you absolutely have to be training extra hard in order to get those repetitions. So like anybody else, I have messed up plenty. There's things that I did that I go, why did I do that? I shouldn't have done it that way. I had a scenario with a car pursuit, and the car pursuit went in a different town. It crashed. My guys were running through the woods looking for somebody. Then they came out of the woods. There was a couple guys still at the vehicle fighting with people that were still in the vehicle. So when I got there, I was all, high adrenaline, if you will, and I was ready to go run in the woods and catch somebody. So one of the patrol guys was like, "Hey, I saw a light right there in the bushes." I went, "Awesome!" I hooked my dog on the harness, and we were running full speed into the bushes. Well, there was nobody in that area where they saw the light. So my dog was trying to pick up a track, but there was now a lot of hot odor in that area, and I was having a hard time getting it. I eventually got a little bit of a track for a little while, but he was almost gassed from the amount of time that I spent running in a little circle inside the area where everybody saw it. I tell that story to guys a lot. If I had stopped, ran the license plate on the vehicle, made sure that I had the perimeter, I would have realized that as a crow flies, they were heading that way because that's where they lived. And I might have put a perimeter on that side, and I probably would have got them to stop with my track because I would have cut the track and not just run around looking for somebody that was in the bushes. Slow down. Mike said it. So it applies to a small department just as much as any other department. Slow down, figure out where they're going, set that perimeter, and then start working your dog. There was no rush. You take a high drive dog and you hook on a harness and you sprint into the bushes. And the high dog is like, "This is awesome!" And he's now everywhere. So we hit a bunch of hot odor, and the patrol later found that guy walking up to his house, and he had gone right the direction I was tracking, but I didn't catch him. So I should have slowed that whole call down. So that's a good one.
What did it do to you from the conditioning aspect? Like, obviously you were tired chasing behind the dog or running behind the dog. So
yeah, yep. I don't run on tracks. If you're working a track, you're, especially out here, you're already 20, 30 minutes behind the stick that's on foot. You're not going to just run up and catch him. You need him to hunker down. You got to get him hunkered down, and then you can find him once he's hunkered down. So I don't run. Running is not going to get us anywhere, and then it's going to create that physical action. The other thing with running, if a dog is running, 10 feet versus moving at a steady pace to 10 feet, those 10 feet that he's running, he's taking less sniffs than if he was walking or moving at a steady pace. So if you're going to have a turn onto B Street and you're running past B Street, before you get that negative and you lost odor, you covered a lot more ground. And then you're trying to circle back, but you've gone much further. So I don't run. There's not a lot of sense in running. I'll try to teach a dog to pull into a harness strong if he's got odor, and I'll pull back. All right, we got this. And then that sets that pace for us in which we're the most successful, and physically that's a space that I can keep up. Same thing I was talking about physical fitness earlier. I was saying my tracking physical fitness program wraps around doing tracking. I try to track at least once a day, every day, whether it's start drill or just a short around the corner drill. I'll say this because it comes up on all the social media group posts all the time. I have no problem whatsoever with a canine team tracking the handler and having the handler set his own tracks at all. I would say at least 90% of my tracks I set myself, and I run them, an hour later or something like that, and I put a toy at the end of them. Whenever you get into tracking, there's 400 different opinions. Everybody's got theirs, and a lot of people have reasons for theirs, and I'm not saying they're wrong. This is just one of the things with the program that I do. Tracking is an action. Tracking is a behavior. Pulling into the harness to get rewarded is a behavior. Sticking to the odor you start with is a behavior. So if I can put tracks out in which they can do all of those behaviors, but it's just my odor because I don't have anybody else to lay the track, then I'm still getting repetitions in tracking. So I'm still getting that nose down behavior pulling forward. Then if I have somebody else that can lay the track, sure, I'll have them go lay a track. But I'll do 90% of my own tracks. So some of your conditioning, wrapping it back around to where the question was, is just through those repetitions. Doing them myself, getting out of the car, tracking a whole bunch. If you can't keep up with your dog for a quarter mile track, then you're gonna have a real big problem being in canine.
What change one thing about the way canine is perceived as a whole?
Perceived?
Yep.
Okay. So I'll speak to my area, because that's obviously what I'm the most familiar with. We don't track all the time. We don't have the big perimeters, and because we don't have the big perimeters, we don't have the helicopters, we don't lock people down as much, and then people end up getting out of our area. So we end up deploying and we don't actually catch anybody. That does happen. You have to get used to that. You come out of patrol school, you got your leash and your harness, and you're like, you go to your first canine call and you're going to catch somebody, and you track for an hour and you didn't catch anybody. And then somebody calls his girlfriend and finds out he's been home for the last hour. I probably had a dozen tracks in which right after we determined that the guy has been home the entire time that I was tracking. So, because you don't have that perimeter. So I think that's just a challenge. We try to work around it. We try to have good repetitions in training. We try to get that mobile perimeter if we can. We try to get some things going on there in order to help get that guy to lock down. But there is going to be a factor where there just wasn't somebody there to catch out here. Then that ends up hurting the perception of the dog team with the other guy. The other guys think that every time the dog shows up, there's going to be a find. The dog's here, awesome, we'll find this guy. So then you don't find that guy, your perception with the patrol guys goes down. The dog couldn't find sand at the beach, and that ends up happening. So I would like to see the perception change a little bit with the agencies, in that it's not just a miracle tool that's going to win every time. It's a tool to be part of the overall program, setting the perimeter, working together, moving the perimeter, shifting the perimeter. It's a part of the process, not just that miracle tool that's going to get you there every time.
Scenario-based training, how important is it, and what is your favorite scenario that you've ever come up with?
My favorite scenario. I love scenario training. So it is super important. Even if it's just I'll break it down even more. It doesn't have to be the full-blown scenario every single time the dog gets out of the car. Those are good. Nothing wrong with those. I think those are good exercises to see where you're at and to see what you need to work on and where you want to improve. With every big full-blown scenario, there's also smaller skills that the dog is showing and learning doing those. So I'll set those smaller skills up every week. And then every now and then put the whole scenario together. No different than the sport dog. Sport dogs, you spend 3 weeks working on targeting a little bit, making sure the dog is targeting really well, and then you open up the whole field and see if he goes down, hits the whole field, but you don't send him down the whole field every day. So I'll do the point-to-point drills that we were talking about earlier. We set those up. They look a little bit like the real deployment, in that the team is moving with their gear. They turn on odor, the dog gets a bite. However, it's not 4 blocks of an area search type of full-blown scenario. So I think that those are definitely cool. I'm trying to think of a good scenario, though. And of course, right now I'm drawing a blank. I will say that I love to get my training group every week. We go to a different town, one of the towns in the training group. We don't have a training area, go down to the yard where we always train. Every week, you check your email, see what town, what address that we're showing up at, and we show up at an address, and we survey the area and figure out what we're going to do at this area. I love that. I love the changing of the training so the dogs don't get conditioned to, we're back at that place. We do the training at that place. The dog's coming out of the car to train every time at a completely different place. With that, there's always a new building. Walk around the building, call it looking for inspiration. I'm like, where can I put a decoy in here? What can I do inside here? And I'll set those up as always different variations depending on where I am. A little bit fly by your seat of the pants, but you're always using new environments.
Nice.
Yeah. Hey, right after this is done, I'll think of that great scenario that you were asking about.
Hey, Jade out of Marion County said, without the real-world deployment numbers, like bigger agencies, what are some things that you do to recreate real-world elements into your training versus other officers just laying tracks?
So, real-world elements into your training versus other officers laying tracks. So we set that tracking picture up the same that it would look on the real world as much as possible. So say I have, it starts over by the telephone pole, it goes a quarter of a mile through town, and then there's a find at the end of it. I may have the tracking team pull up, may have the handler get out, talk to the handler about where his start's going to be, then put a couple guys with him and run that track the same way that it would look onto the road. Do the same thing with the building searches. feels like it should sound more complex than that, but it's really not. I try to create that same picture that I envision how they're going to deploy into that training. So that, 2 or 3 guys stacked up on the door, maybe somebody at the back of it, move the guy around the building a couple times after the announcements, and then have the team start clearing one room at a time, using the long line, because that's how we do it, and having the picture look the same amount as it does in training. So you're just trying to recreate it. It may not look the same as Marion County's picture, but it's how our picture looks up here, so we have to create that picture.
Nice. Hey, how important is it to, I guess, beat into the heads of the guys that when you come to train real? So if you're on the track, have your gear, have your vest, have that stuff. Like how important is that to you?
That's super important. One of the phrases that we use all the time, and we try to talk about, and I'm better at it with my sport guys, and I got to get better at it with my police guys, is to train with a purpose. Have a purpose of what you're doing. So if we come out to train, we're going to do tracking. Okay, this is what we're looking for. We're looking to find the start. We're looking to go 200 yards and then get a apprehension reward. I want to have a couple cover guys. I want to give a bunch of announcements before the apprehension, real world picture, something like that. So I set these principles up in the setup of the scenario, and then I try to encourage the guys to play those roles. We're not just walking behind the dog. We're searching an area. We've got other guys with us. They're searching the area. It's probably more what Jay was getting at. The handlers are communicating with the backup guys, asking them, check over here, check over there. All right, I think I have some air scent. Let's look the bushes up here, do those communication things. So I'll get, going back to training with a purpose. You're training with a purpose. We talk about what we're going to do ahead of time. This is what our goal is for that scenario. This is what we need in order to train that scenario. And then we go ahead and do it. By talking about it ahead of time and then getting the dog out of the car to do it, it does help put the handlers in that right mindset. I don't really care whether the dog's on deck ready to go. I'm more interested in that the team comes up to the deck ready to go, already having the plan. So it's okay for him to go put his dog away and then go talk to this handler. Hey, this is what we're going to do. Then that handler will go get his dog. It takes a little bit longer, but then it has the opportunity to beat it in the heads, as you refer to it, to the handler about having the equipment and then having the setup and that realistic aspect to the training as much as possible. We'll do that with the building searches. I'll tell the guys like, hey, this one, again, going back to Jay's question, now I'm answering it better. This one is going to be more of a tactical search. You're going to communicate with each other, clear rooms as you go. And then after we've done a couple of those, like, hey, we might cut the dog off leash on this one. And this one's more about the dog learning. This one's about the dog following his nose into that tight spot and then getting a bite inside that tight spot. This one's less about your tactics. Roll back to another scenario, get the tactics on that one.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Jay says, Nick, great job motivating the handlers in your area. Fantastic job taking that lead role during what you're doing. Better the industry in your area. Keep up the great work, brother.
Nice. Good guy, man. Thank you.
Hey, so thanks for your time. I'm going to give you a chance to wrap up and, talk to those younger guys that are watching. Keep spitting the knowledge that you've already done for this past hour, but, leave them with some parting words and then let us know where we can follow you. And I just want you to know that we appreciate your time for coming on here this Saturday morning. Absolutely.
I think the most Troy Casey from Boston is one of my mentors, and I'll completely steal his line. There is handlers, and then there's cops with dogs, and there's two different types of people. Be a handler. Be a guy that goes out on your own time. Be a guy that goes out extra. Be a guy that hangs out past 4 o'clock when training's over because you want to get one more rep in there. Be that guy that watches podcasts, that gets into learning, that is not afraid to go to the civilian sport club and ask questions and see how that applies to his police dog. He's open-minded versus the cop with the dog that only wants his take-home cruiser, only wants to train for 6 hours and just get through the bare minimums and then just blame the perimeter once he didn't find somebody. So be that handler, go the extra mile. I have very fortunate. I have a group of guys that work really hard, and the harder that they work, the more I'll give them, the more repetitions that we get. Feed the hungry, as my friend Denise would say. So